Hey, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to show off what is going to be the brand new Titan build coming up on the channel, and I cannot wait to show this one off. This, I think, is some of the most fun I've had on Titan, and more than anything else, what I love about this build is the skill ceiling for it is miles high. It has taken me a while to nail the gameplay loop of this build, but for me, that is something that I love. That feeling of genuinely getting better with a build. This is also the first time that I've used Flechette Storm, or at least first time kind of working on it inside of a build. And at first, I was kind of skeptical and I almost dropped this build. I was so close. I picked it up and I was like, yeah, this is kind of as good as people thought it was, which isn't very. I'm so glad I tested it and pushed it a little more because I honestly think this build is so worth your time. It's that quintessential, aggressive, punchy, in-your-face Titan playstyle, but if you want to, it can do something which is so rare for the Titan class: range damage. Consistent range damage. I know the word scares some Titans, but honestly, it has felt so refreshing. And I'm also so glad that this is on Titans as well, because I'm fully aware that I haven't put out a Titan build in a while that's kind of something that I know people are really going to enjoy. And I promise you, if you stick with learning this build, you will absolutely love it. I was playing with one of my mates and I was just like, hey, I'm going to be testing out a build. And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. He didn't inspect me. And he was just watching me and he's been like, what the hell are you doing? Because you're like up in the air, you grapple to one side of the map and then fly to the other. And I was just like, Flechette Storm? He was like, what the hell? It does stuff that you wouldn't expect it to, but it really doesn't compromise on losing out on something like Banner of War, for example. I tell you what, I'll talk about Banner of War because I know this is probably going to be a question that people will ask of like, what can I run with this, yada yada yada. The one thing I will say, I tried my hardest to make a good Wishful Ignorance build, but I just have a problem with that exotic. I think its damage is really good. I think the buff it's getting going into Edge of Fate is going to be, again, really nice for its damage, but for me, the damage of that exotic is not the problem that it has. It's that it loses out on consistent, easy access to woven mail. And don't get me wrong, it's got Banner of War, which is nice, but Banner of War is really good because it's healing that is made more effective by the fact that you have got a strong damage resist on in woven mail. With Wishful Ignorance, you lose that, and for me, I dislike the playstyle that I'm forced into with Wishful Ignorance, and I also think this version is just more fun. It's more abilities, it's more spammy. You make up for losing out on Wishful's bonus damage by just having more abilities to use. And as well, this is, Exotic is Heart of Inmost Lights. You're also going to be getting more melee damage going into Edge of Fate, and yeah, one of the reasons why I'm uploading this now, but the build video for this is going to be coming out in Edge of Fate, is that everything about this build is getting buffed, whereas the Wishful Ignorance version is kind of just getting itself buffed, and then the stat changes. Don't get me wrong, the stat changes are going to be really good for that, but it's much more that you're just going to be getting kind of like the passive bonus melee regen that you get from Frenzy Blade, and that's what's there. Whereas this build, it fully uses every single aspect of the changes we're getting in Edge of Fate. I just don't think Wishful Ignorance is going to keep up with the speed and enjoyment that I get from this build. First up, Wishful Ignorance was not fun in that it stuck me on a leash to be around teammates because the way you get melee energy is from Banner of War, and its pulses when they hit teammates will give you energy. I dislike that. One of the things I love about this build is how insanely mobile it is and how much it can spam Grapple Grenade. With that build, you just don't get that, unfortunately, and it never felt quite as fun. But going back to it, talking about stats, everything about this build is getting changed. It's why I'm waiting until Edge of Fate to make this. Whereas something like the Blind Hunter build I did a while back, I could kind of say what was going to be good there, just because the exotics were kind of not massively tied to ability regen. Like, for example, Ride and Flux. That doesn't give you any super energy regen, it just makes your super longer. It's going to get changed by the super stat massively with more damage and faster charging supers, but like, it wasn't complicated to just say the super stat is going to be good there. Whereas with this, so much stuff gets changed. I'll list all of them. In the subclass, we have got Into the Fray. That is a currently 300% increased base melee regen rate, buffed from having over 70 in the melee stats. Your Heart of Inmost Light is going to get buffed, having over 70 in melee or grenade stats. You're going to have, whenever you deal damage with a Tangle, it gives you melee energy. That's going to get buffed if you invest more in the melee stats. We've also got Buried Bloodline, which is Devour, which I believe is also going to get changed by the grenade stat being higher, because it deals with percentage-based regen, which I believe should be affected by investing in grenade stats. And then we've also got Impact Induction on the arms as one of our mods, which, wouldn't you guess it, gets buffed by the new stat system. So much stuff here is getting changed going into Edge of Fate. It feels wrong to start working on it now when I know this is really, what you're watching is going to be the watered down version of this build, which sounds stupid because it's already doing so well, but it's going to be doing even better. I promise you, if you look at this and you're like, whoa, this looks really cool, test it in Edge of Fate, it gets even better. Sorry, also, Frenzy Blade has a kind of like percentage-based scaler depending on how many kind of charges you have. So lowest is when you have none, and then obviously it scales up as you head towards 3. Buffed. Again, just everything about this build is getting buffed. And Blade Fury as well is also going to be getting buffed. Yeah, okay, not technically buffed, but Blade Fury is going to be resetting your melee charges. So if you invest into the super stats as well, faster charging supers, that means more that wasn't English. Means more melee refunds. It's just going to be good. I love it. One thing with this build though, and it's a genuine drawback of it because I know this isn't going to be a build for everyone, is that you do need to have Buried Bloodline. It is your Banner of War replacement, and there was no version of this build that I tried that felt as good as having Devour in the kit. You're going to see in the room after the third tower, the one that's kind of just on our right now, why Devour is so important. There are so many times where if Devour wasn't up, we would have been dead with a capital D, but because we have it, we're so chilling. For what is going on in the build, just go over the abilities again. It's Flechette Storm, Into the Fray, Heart of Inmost Light is the exotic, and to be honest, the fragments I'm going to struggle to remember the names of, but I can tell you exactly the ability descriptions of them. The one where you deal damage with a Tangle gives you melee energy. Whenever you pick up an Orb of Power as well, you're going to get Woven Mail for 5 seconds. That is nice in that it kind of just bridges the gap on your Tangle cooldown and having Woven Mail. It basically, you throw the Tangle, and let's say if you only stand in 1 pulse, it's going to give you Woven Mail for 10 seconds, whereas if you were to say pick up an orb, it just extends that timer to a point where you can then make another Tangle. It just makes your Woven Mail downtime feel much less. Almost where you go back to back on Woven Mail. Quite often you do go back to back on Woven Mail, which is really nice. One fragment that I've got in the build, which I am tempted to change, it's still one that I'm tweaking and messing around with, is the one where your strand debuffs last longer. The only strand debuff that we've really got in this build, or at least got consistently just through the kits, you can sever at the minute with Tangle hits, but that's not really kind of something that's going to be there because it's tied to the seasonal artifacts. The only one that we've really got is Unravel, and that's through Flechette Storm. I guess you've got Sever through Frenzy Blade, but 99.9% of the time your melee is going to be a Flechette Storm, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that is one that I'm thinking of changing, just because I don't know how much it adds to the kit, and this build has got so many ways to apply Unravel through Frenzy Blade and through Grapple melee as well, that, yeah, it just kind of, I don't know if it's super needed in the build. Also, speaking of, reason why I've gone with Heart of Inmost Light here with Flechette Storm is because Flechette Storm and Grapple and the interaction that you have in between Grapple and Tangles makes it so that these two abilities, ignoring the Rally Barricade, Rally Barricade, they basically just charge themselves. You can make a Tangle, and then every single time you grapple to the Tangle, that is going to be kind of using your grenade to empower melee and class. And then every time you use Flechette Storm, that's then going to be always double empowering your grenade and your class. And then also the grapple melee counts as a melee hit. So grapple basically self-refunds itself from Heart of Inmost Light. And the last fragment, one that is so impactful in the build, is where you deal damage and you generate grenade energy. In fact, I think that one's called Thread of Generation. I kid you not. You grapple, you use Flechette Storm maybe 2 or 3 times from the regen you get from that ability, and then Heart of Inmost Light's regen as well, which will now be 2 times empowered. It's literally just grapple, Flechette Storm, grapple. And you can keep that loop going so much. It's ridiculous. You work in Devour as well, because obviously we've got that from Very Bloodline. And yeah, your grapples are so expendable. I almost consider this to be like the best grapple build as well in the game. Or maybe not the best grapple build. You know, it's hard to argue with what a Cerceracne can do on Prismatic Hunter. But by the amount of grapples you can actually do, yeah, I consider this to be the premier, I can make the most grapples. I honestly, if you play this with someone, you will just, odds are they're going to question you and be like, what the hell are you using? Because you fly around the map with this build from how many grapples you have. It's ridiculous. They'll be like, are you in the air as a Titan? Because Flechette Storm raises you up, and you're like, yeah, it's just what Titans do. It's honestly, this is such a fun build. If I don't know how to sell you more on this build, apart from saying that it is just so much fun and surprisingly really good. I hope this does some justice in being able to solo Mars Battleground, which isn't an easy GM, especially this room, and if you do the towers as I have here. I know you can skip the towers, but I like doing them because they're just fun. They're really ad dense. I enjoy them as encounters. It's literally just, you need to stand here and fight off a bunch of ads. I was like, perfect. It's just shooting guns and punching stuff and grappling stuff. Love it. But yeah, it's a really good build. But fair word of warning. I said it before and I'll say it again. The skill ceiling with this build is extraordinarily high. I really do mean that. There have been so many times throughout messing around with this build where I've just learned new things about it. It feels like every time I play there's some like new thing that I learn about the build and how it works. And it's got an extremely specific playstyle as well. You have to play around keeping Woven Mail up from your Tangles. You have to make sure that you don't spawn your Tangles in bad places. Like, for example, here, if I was to spawn that Tangle back in the distance, then that basically loses me access to Woven Mail. And odds are, right now in these fights, I'll be dead if I did that. So you've got to be really aware of what you're doing with this build. I know this looks reckless, and don't get me wrong, you can be with this build, but it's almost kind of like controlled aggression. You've got to be pretty on it, make sure that you're not making stupid mistakes here, because it can cost you your life quite easily if you play this badly. What you're seeing right now is just Devour Woven Mail moment, where it's just DR and healing and we just don't die. If you're used to Banner of War, this should feel, or Banner of War Woven Mail, from Into the Fray. This should feel pretty familiar to you in that kind of like, I'm playing Strand Titan and I'm not gonna die. It feels like that. But with Flechette Storm, which just makes such a world of difference. It keeps this thing so fresh. And range damage, as I said, it's such a premium to have on this class, but oh, it's so good. One thing with this build that I've got to say, because it's going to make your experience with a Flechette Storm much nicer. When you're up in the air, one of the things that I first disliked about this build is that you get a lot of air hang time with Flechette Storm, which genuinely was one of the reasons why I was almost not going to recommend this build, because it didn't feel good. The feel of a build, more importantly, it feeling like a fun playstyle is so important to me. I will recommend builds that are kind of good, not great, if their feel is amazing. But with Flechette Storm, when I first was using it, I was like, this doesn't feel good, and that's a problem. Until I figured out that when you're in the air with Flechette Storm, if you holster to any other weapon, so basically something that you haven't got equipped, then you immediately can start shooting your guns once you've sent Flechette Storm off. It makes the world of difference to using this. As in, you'll see right now, look, I pull out my gun straight away, I'm out. Whereas if you don't do that, you will just hang in the air, and it also makes you such a target, because you can, at least in this build, if you Flechette Storm up, and the ability just by itself has got a little bit of kind of, it brings you up into the air. It's something you can actually use to get up to cover. But a lot of the time what you want to be doing is using Flechette Storm. And then because you're Flechette Storming and then that's proccing the regen for your grenade, which is grapple in this case, you can Flechette Storm and then holster to a different gun and kind of like immediately bring yourself back down with grapple grenade. It not only feels cool, it looks cool, and it's effective damage. And it's such a nice little combo of that kind of like grapple something, then slide, get Flechette Storm ready, and then re-grapple something, and you're good. And yeah, another thing to always look out for this build are your tangles. Sometimes because Flechette Storm is applying Unravel, enemies might just die. Always keep an eye out on when you can spawn in tangles, and if you have just spawned in a tangle, where it is. Because tangles are your woven mail, but also ability regen if you re-grapple to them, and then obviously from Heart of the Most Light. And also, if you are throwing your tangle at enemies as well. Oh, Jesus Christ, sorry, I might have to cut that. It's also going to give you melee energy from the fragment, which I can't remember, but yeah, they're important things to keep an eye out for. I'm honestly kind of worried for this build because hunters are getting a new exotic in Edge of Fate called Moirai or Mirai. I'm not entirely sure on the name, but it can break tangles and then bring them back to the hunter, which I really hope that is specifically for their own tangles. I'm gonna hate Mirai hunters if they start stealing my tangles and I'm playing something like a Wanderer Warlock or a Titan build like this that relies on tangles, because they're just like, throw out a Threaded Spectre, Threaded Spike, and no fault of their own, just scoop up tangles that other people have made. I really hope it is specifically coded to hunters' own tangles and nobody else's, because to me that's quite important. I will advocate for like not playing with Mirai hunters if I'm playing strand builds, because tangles are really important parts of builds, and I get they can turn them into whirling maelstroms, but if I lose woven mail in my build because they just gobble up a tangle that I've made with their Threaded Spike, yeah, I'm not going to be happy. That won't be good. Sorry, I kind of forgot where I was going. I think I was talking about playstyle. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, to be honest, I talk about all of this in the build vid. I really recommend that you watch that, because I feel like I've got experience with this build now, and there's a lot of stuff I can recommend. If you're wondering why I just got a load of Flechette Storm, you get ability refresh at the start of this encounter, and you can kind of spam them there. One thing here, I do the boss cheese. Too many times, I am an absolute victim of it in this strike, where I would just be fighting, and the boss just out of, like, the blue, just teleports on top of me, and then just one-shots me. It happens so much, so I was like, you know what, sod it, I'm not wasting 20 minutes worth of time to just get teleported on top of and die. So yeah, I'm afraid this part is the cheese spot, but then obviously we got to dump the ARC batteries afterwards, and yeah. One thing, if you have played this gem and you've used grapple grenade, you might know, but the amount of times I have grappled and a pillar has just eaten my grapple melee, and then the enemy which I was supposed to grapple is just like, oh look, there's a titan in front of me, I'm just going to punch him, and then I die. I was like, oh, nah, I'm stopping that. It happened so many times, and it happened consistently as well. The pillars in this room are really weird as well. If you're using combination, not combination blow, disorienting blow. And somebody mentioned this the other day. But if you punch a pillar, you build up bulk charge stacks. Why the hell that happens, I couldn't even tell you, but it does. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that is a rare moment that grapple actually works. But I had to go for it because I need woven mail here. And then you can see, like, my focus immediately is get a tangle for woven mail and get kills with buried bloodline, because I need devour to stay in these fights. Like, it's absolutely necessary here. Woven mail, when you're in these solo situations where they're ad dense, it's just not going to cut it by itself. And yeah, here it's just kind of running around, just staying safe, just making sure that you're doing ad clear, keeping those yellow bar knights. One thing that's really nice with buried bloodline is that if you kill a single yellow bar, you get devour immediately, whereas it would otherwise be 4 red bars. But these, like, arc charge wrathborns, they're really nice to kind of just get devour off of if you need it in a pinch. So you can just work them down with, well, you see here, I'm pretty sure I do it. I kind of like work down with the machine gun or with the fusion rifle, and then just get a kill with buried bloodline, and then I'm sorted. Kind of no stress on getting devour, especially in the high end as well, where you're dealing with champs as well. You can always just get a final kill on them. One thing that's really nice as well, devour during your super, it feels really good. Like, stupidly good. You can get away with some of the most ridiculous stuff when you've got devour and just a damage resist up. Yeah, I was, to be honest, I did test other stuff with this build, like other healing stuff, and just nothing came close, to be honest, to buried bloodline, which, again, I don't like recommending it, but if the best version of a build is tied to a certain exotic, I got to bring it up. This is the exotic I think you need to be running with this build, and it's also just really good. It can weaken targets, which sets you up really nicely for getting a little bit of bonus damage, and also if you're kind of applying weaken as well, quite often that might have synergy with stuff in the seasonal artifacts, like I think what we've just seen here. It's good. It's a great gun, and it really does make the build in this case. I think you see me here. Yeah, you see, just yellow bar, 10 seconds of devour. It's that easy to get it in these cases. Also, we've got anti-barrier sidearm as well, which, that's one thing with this build that I can kind of poke a weakness at, is that it only really has unstop, and it's only got it during its super. Otherwise, this build is just all about unravel, but you don't really suspend stuff outside of your super, that being your kind of unstop stun, so, you know, that's fine. Although, unironically, the change that has been made to Chill Club, where shatters now stun overloads, it's kind of okay, I don't know. Sorry, I don't even know where I was going with that one. Like, I don't know why I was relating that to this build. I was wanting to say, kind of, I guess, whilst I've covered everything that's going on in the build, that I don't think that change is going to be as drastic as people think. We've still got Volt Shot, which to me was always like the premier overload stunning perk. Yeah, I mean, in Bungie's own words, they're able to now work in a lot more stuff and put Chill Clip on more exciting weapons. I think that's going to be good. I think it will especially help lift up stasis subclasses a little bit more, which is going to be really nice. So yeah, it's a change we'll just have to see, but yeah. I was kind of running out of ammo here. I've got Special Finisher on my cloak. Cloak? I've played Hunter too much. On my Titan Mark. But I wasn't really using it all that well here. So yeah, I kind of was running low on ammo, but Bungie's kind of like auto refill mechanic. Also, I'm pretty sure I almost die here because I fumble getting back up. Yeah, I bumped my head. I was honestly so lucky that I still had the R from the super there. I would have been dead as a dodo. But yeah, this wizard starts getting like little shots on me. I was like, ooh. I was getting scared. Yeah, and then he goes like super tight to the wall. Yeah, honestly, I don't really like doing cheeses all that much, but it's just this boss room. Honestly, not that difficult, apart from the fact that the boss just teleports on top of you and one-shots you. I said it before, but it's evil. This is an evil boss because he does it so often, and I've lost too many runs to the point where I'm now just really unbothered by doing this cheese. I kind of just, yeah, I stopped caring. I feel good enough in doing the towers legitimately, and I think at that point you've also got a good showcase of the build, which is what I really like doing with these solo jams. They're much more about showing off builds than they are kind of getting like a crazy fast completion time or anything like that. I always try and go out of my way to kill as many ads as possible, try to like complete the encounter or strike as I imagine it was meant to be done. And yeah, I just go for the finish here. My super starts targeting this guy, which I was like, please stop sticking to him. But we got Woven Mail, so we survived the hit there, and we finished the gem. I really hope you, if you play this build right now, enjoy it. But please, please, when the build video comes out for this, watch it, because that's going to have like the full new Edge of Fate stat breakdown, and you're really going to see this build in its best light. So there you go, you can see like 400 and something kills, 118 orbs, and then I'll show off the subclass when it loads. Also a little drip check. And yeah, there you go, Blade Fury, but you have to Rally Barricade, Frenzied, Grapple, Flechette Storm, Into the Fray, Generation, Continuity, Fury, and Warden. And then just Fusion for help out for Unstops, Buried Bloodline, Machine Gun, and then these are the mods. Double Heavy-Handed is really nice because it lets you get away with not just relying on your Strand Siphon for making orbs, which is nice for picking them up and getting Woven Mail, and then that's a seasonal artifact. Anyway, that's about it from me, but see ya!